Okay, I'll wait until John sits down and Peter sits down.
It wasn't worried about my head case, I got this up.
Okay. I call to order the meeting of the Town of Hartford Select Board meeting at 6:01 on Tuesday, sorry, May 27th, 2025. I'd like to make one little opening comment. I'd like to address the members of the public and the board regarding civil language. There is a rule that the whole board voted to continue at our reorganization meeting in March. No personal attacks are permitted. This includes both members of the public and the select board. As the statement reads, both are prohibited from making personal, impertinent, or threatening remarks. There is, as one member of the public stated later, zero tolerance for such. If uncivil remarks continue, the board, along with the town manager, will have to consider our options. So we will next move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there someone in the room who would like to lead it? Thank you, Scott.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mike, could I hear that you can hear us and see us?
I can hear and see you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so I'm going to close the select board and open as the local liquor control board. And we have 3 renewals. And I would just like to mention the last one. Consider the renewal of Collaborative Stoke LLC doing business as it is Trail Break Taps and Tacos, not Tocos. And so we will do all 3 together. So I will wait and hear if there's someone who'd like to make a motion.
Madam Chair, I wonder if that was supposed to read tapas, but taps and tapas and tacos potentially.
No,
No, it's taps and tacos.
Oh, taps. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great.
Okay.
Pardon
So
me.
Here on tap.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I'll go back to my first request. Is there someone who would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Eric.
thank you. I move that the board can renew the license for REDCAN at 129 South Main Street, Suite 100, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001 for a first class and third class liquor license and for outdoor consumption. And that the board renew the license for the Quechee Pizza Chef, 5893 Woodstock Road, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001 for a first class, third class license and outdoor liquor consumption license. And that the board renew the license for Collaborative Stoke LLC doing business as Trail Break Taps and Tacos, 5945 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059 for a first class, third class license and outdoor liquor consumption license.
And a friendly amendment to add the LLC onto the REDCAN
That
liquor license.
accepted.
Thank you. Okay, is there a second?
A second.
All right, Brandon seconds the motion. It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And was that an aye, Mike?
Aye, yes.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you all for that. We will close at the as the local liquor control board and reopen as the Hartford Select Board. We have no local cannabis control board business, so we will move on to the order of agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda?
I'd like to just correct something on reappointment B.
Okay,
That should be Brett Mayfield is applying for reappointment to the Parks and Rec Committee.
okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, John. Any questions about that? There are no others, so then we will move into public comments. I would like to say one thing. I'm putting on my educator hat because after listening to discussions several times in the last months, there's still some confusion about public comment. So I just want to say two things. Under public comment, individuals have 3 minutes to discuss items not on the agenda. When the timer goes off, you should wrap up your speech. Under the agenda, public comments are limited to 2 minutes, should be germane to the item being discussed, must refrain from repetition or speech that is irrelevant to the business of the agenda item. And all of those facts are in our select board rules and regulations. So thank you for that. And Peter, you're our first public comment.
Thanks, as I see there's no one else for me to let go ahead. Now, before I begin comment, if the transit issue we talked about the last meeting and the Palestine issue were on the agenda, please let me know so I can reserve comments for those line items when appropriate. So are any of them on the agenda tonight?
They are not.
So the transit issue is not on the agenda?
No.
I had a request from Select Board member Brandon Smith to investigate the situation about certain retailers in Vermont not accepting cash for transactions. I did so and I shared the information with the members of the Select Board. I was not asked to place anything on the agenda.
And I sent it on to Peter.
Yes, I got a copy. I wasn't sure if it was on the agenda tonight, but like I said, when I mentioned the panel, we have a saying over in that part of the world. The agenda is agenda, which is why I asked ahead of time. If you understand the language of room over there, you get it. And among other things, it's like today was my first visit to the Vermont Law School just up the road from here in Royalton. It was a very exciting day. And when they heard about what I mentioned about this issue, they asked me to remind what's going on with the way Dartmouth has been behaving in the wake of the recent protest there. They can use their stake in the coach to deny certain people access to transit, and the way they're behaving over there. I mean, it's a good thing. I've had to use some extra, go into the gray zone of legality, but at least it's made sure that Cox is on his way out of there and not using lawfare to go after people behaving in a civil manner, not only just for expressing their rights, but for using simple transit and other services open to the public. I mean, if I were to go into detail about that line, it would take more than 3 or 2 minutes just to go on, because how the hell can someone from Montpelier, I mean, they certainly miss me over there, as Ann Watson to say, because I would have found those statutes that New York and Boston has within the afternoon. Because this is, I mean, as a former educator myself, I mean, and someone who's litigated, if you couldn't find something that simple, we would tell you to look a little harder. And I also forgot to remember when Brandon asked me to do some fact finding on some of the traveling that I had to do? Well, I forgot to bring those tickets, but I mean, simply, a person in Boston or in the state of New York can buy tickets for a bus line or any transit up here. Same thing with Amtrak. But a person up here cannot pay in cash the way they can at those others. And it should be, as John pointed out in his emails. I'm not feeling too well tonight, but this is an important topic. And John was correct to point out, half the people in the region can only pay cash or use some of these banking services. I mean, this should be an important item on an agenda so we can discuss further.
Thank you, Peter. Is there anybody online, Miranda?
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
And who is it?
Initials DF.
Oh, that would be Dan Fraser.
Oh, okay.
Come on over, Dan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to comment on the last select board meeting. It was painful to hear a citizen swear at the select board. Having served on the select board for 5 years, 2 years as vice chair and 2 years as chair, I understand the process quite well. First, let me thank those currently sitting in the 7 seats for servicing. I know for several of you that this is a new process and position for you. It's hard to act under the pressure of situations that catch you off guard, like the incident that occurred last week. This has not been the first time something like this has happened. Remember, each of you has the power to say point of order and refocus the meeting. To the public, please remember that personal attacks are not allowed. I would suggest that the select board consider a policy that would require individuals who call in quote unquote live and attack the select board, that their privileges to call in be terminated. They could still write before or after any meeting with any concerns or questions, so they would still be able to participate. Also make sure that the select board can direct the individual controlling calls from the public that they have the ability to immediately disconnect the caller. If an individual is physically at a meeting and attacks the board or its members, or after a warning doesn't stop, then the quote-unquote sergeant at arms can be called to have that individual removed from the meeting. I encourage members of the community to call in or write to the select board to show their support for the members of the select board who are serving us. Incidents like the one that occurred last week should not be tolerated, and those who participate in this way need to be held accountable for their actions and have their privileges revoked. It's not okay to attack our elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Is there anybody else online? Okay.
Let me make one elaboration on Dan's comment, because I was present at the last meeting.
Why don't you wait until you get over there, Peter?
I just don't want to put anyone's ears out over there. Because I was at the last, as someone who was at the last, I did not hear any specific threats being made at anyone during the last select board meeting, in person or online. And if a person did make a specific threat, they would be liable for criminal charges. And as one thing one reason I was so excited when I was at my first visit to the Vermont Law School during my federal case, I did successfully litigate that swearing and other such profanity censorship laws are a form of censorship. Incidentally, that old girlfriend of mine who helped me with my housing program, her aunt's the one that introduced the word shit into the English language. So, because those laws were done to discriminate against people from the part of the world me and my father's family are from. And one reason why we make it such a big deal, I have to do some traveling next week to meet with those family members and these lawyers out of state. And like I said, the way darker than some, and incidentally, yesterday was the first time I had to assist in getting someone under control physically when they physically attacked me and one of Chief Cooney's associates over at the bus station. This is one thing I should have meant, but this is one reason we need, because if there were laws in place where someone could pay in cash, they could have left that same day instead of lingering around for a day.
Thank you, Peter. And there was personal attack. Thank you.
At the very end.
At the very end. Yeah.
But not a threat of violence.
Okay. We are moving on then, closing public comment and next on to select board comments and announcements. Ashley, would you like to begin if there's anything?
Nothing.
Okay, Brandon?
Don't have anything.
Okay. Ida?
No comments.
Miranda? Eric?
Nothing tonight.
Oh, I'm the only one. So,
Mike.
and then Mike, you go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Mary. I don't have any comments.
Okay, sorry, thank you. On the 15th of May, the Haven broke ground in preparation for the low barrier shelter. I attended as a representative for the town as our town manager was at a conference. I was impressed by their capital campaign and architectural drawings that show not only the area where the residents would sleep, but the areas where, like the Haven, the professional staff will assist the residents in working on the issues that hold them back from becoming a more functional member of the community. As Michael Redmond stated in his speech, their job is not to solve homelessness, that is a cultural issue, but to work with the homeless to remediate as much as possible the issues that have put these people here. It was very nice, lots of people. I met one of the fire marshals and it was just a really great group of people that were represented from the town. So anyway, that's that. Okay, so now we're on to appointments. And the first appointment is is a new appointment, but I don't think Katie's here.
She might be online, don't know. Katie Williams?
No.
Okay. I had the impression from Lana that she had been notified that she needed to be present or available
Maybe we'll
online.
go through the
We can, maybe
reappointment.
maybe she'll show up.
Maybe she'll show up that time. Okay, so we'll move to the reappointment of Brett Mayfield to the Parks and Rec Commission for a 3-year term beginning May 27, 2025 and ending May 26, 2028.
Brett has a conflict for this evening, but he understands that strictly speaking, his presence is not required for a reappointment.
Right.
He expresses his regrets.
Absolutely. So do I have a motion for Brett's reappointment?
Chair.
Okay, Brandon,
I move that the board reappoint Brett Mayfield to the Parks and Rec Commission for a 3-year term beginning May 27th, 2025 and ending May 26th, 2028.
and is there a second? Miranda, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mike, and aye. So the motion passes. Now we're back to Katie Williams again, so.
She again was scheduled for about 6:28 or so. So you're rocketing through your agenda. She may yet appear.
Right,
We can proceed with the rest of the meeting if you'd
Great.
like.
that's what I like to hear. Okay, so we'll get back to Katie hopefully. And then it's the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Negotiations on the terms of a contract with the Clerical Workers Union continued with a session this past Friday, May 23rd. Additional sessions have been scheduled for May 30th, that's this Friday, and then next Friday, June 6th. In follow-up to the Select Board's resolution declaring the town to be ADA friendly, the town manager has spoken with Kendra LaRoche of the Special Needs Support Center. We will discuss tomorrow morning the town's ADA compliance and a plan for a future site visit to assure town compliance with all the terms and obligations we've taken on in the resolution. As to curbside recycling, efforts are ongoing to alert town residents of the discontinuance effective June 30th of the town's curbside recycling program. The town has communicated the change to residents via e-newsletters, social media announcements, and a dedicated page on the town's website. There has been news coverage of the change. And of course, all of these note the alternatives available to residents for recycling, which are the transfer station, local garbage haulers, which are required by law to provide recycling services, and the Lebanon Transfer Station. A postcard has been developed and is going out, I believe, this week to the home of every town resident. The transfer station is preparing for an increase in usership and is planning to make a modification to its posted hours of operation effective July 2nd by offering early evening access on Wednesdays, leaving the gate open until 5:45 p.m. along with the other days plus the Saturday that already exists. As to other departments, I can highlight a few things. The assessing department notes that the assessment grieving process is ongoing. Today began the second week of grievance hearings. The Parks and Rec Department note that the demolition of the Emerge building at the Maxfield Sports Complex is in motion. The asbestos abatement was completed and we're awaiting a date to be scheduled for the building's demolition and removal. Good news from Parks and Rec. They've received notification from the National Recreation and Park Association Commission for accreditation of park and recreation agencies, that's a mouthful, known as CAPRA, that we have met 153 of 154 standards and will go before the commission at the NRPA conference in September to receive their re-accreditation award. So congratulations to Scott and his team for all the hard work that went into that process. Hartford Parks and Rec is the only nationally accredited agency in the state of Vermont and one of 214 such agencies across the country. So again, a lot to be proud of. The communications and media specialist notes that he's launched and continues to update the new police department website, and he's working with planning and development department to overhaul their website to include more relevant and pertinent information for residents and builders. The Department of Public Works points out that Pike Industries has completed 75% of the fiscal year 25 paving projects and anticipates completing the remaining roads in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Highway Division reports that they have responded to and continue to work on damages from the May 17th storm event. Removed numerous trees from roads and cleared stormwater culverts on the day of the event, and working on road and road shoulder repairs. The fire department similarly notes that on Saturday, May 17th, a significant rain and wind event occurred on Sykes Mountain Avenue and Fairview Terrace. This caused power outages, as you will remember, fallen trees, and damage to residences. The associated flooding caused by the significant rain flooded streets in the downtown, most notably in the Gate Street vicinity. The chief wants to issue a thank you to the fire department, the police department, and DPW crews for working together to handle the significant impact on the community. The fire marshal has been quite busy conducting damage assessments since the event. We've also heard that firefighter Gabrielle Poole has successfully completed all of her probationary requirements and is now officially released from probation. We wish her all a long, successful career serving the community.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Sure.
Okay. So our next item of business.
Madam
Oh,
Chair?
I'm sorry.
No
Eric?
problem. A question, if I may?
Yes.
Thank you. Question on the 10, the thermal energy network that we heard about from the sustainability coordinator and the Energy Commission back in early April, I believe it was. Understood at the time that the commercial arrangements were still very much to be decided, to be defined. But in the next breath, I think they said, well, but there could be some urgency because of some other constraint. And so I was wondering where things stood with that and what the board could foresee with respect to that project. And on a related note, we saw the draft PPP in front of us. And so, I've sort of been thinking about what will we expect in the coming months with respect to the Coolidge redevelopment project, and what, and I ask this in part because it will be interesting to understand and explore what preparatory discussions we should be having as well.
I've been in touch periodically with David Briggs and his real estate developer colleague, Adam Grounds, as have all the folks in planning development and the environmental sustainability coordinator. It's proper to mention both those topics in the same breath because we look at them as related. We're expecting, I believe, to hear from David Briggs and Adam Grounds sometime in June. That's the last we spoke about it. That was their timetable. They're evaluating more recent information they have about building costs, and that's forced them to tweak and adjust their planned presentation a little bit. But they recognize that they'd like to be as prepared as possible for their presentation. And so they are just taking this a little bit extra time to get their ducks in a row and T's crossed and I's dotted. So I would expect that you'd all hear from David Briggs on a meeting in June. And I imagine that the topic of the geothermal network would come up prominently in that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Michael, go ahead. Is it Michael?
Thank you. This is regards to one of the motions that's coming up. I didn't know if I should make a comment before or after that pertains to the Upper Valley Haven. So I thought I'd raise my hand now, but I can raise it after, speak afterwards if that's the better time.
This is fine, Mike.
Thank you. For consideration, under the local emergency management plan, there was a list of organizations that should have additional coordination. And the Haven shelters were not on that list, and I would suggest maybe to consider that as far as part of the plan that's going to be adopted by vote.
Scott, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, Michael, I'm just looking, but I think you are listed. Yeah, under organizations and communities requiring additional coordination, section 5 of the document.
Oh, it's a different section.
It calls you out specifically with regards to unhoused locations and campsites throughout the
Okay.
community.
Okay, great. We're more like a building than a campsite, but sure, as long as we're there. I missed that. That's fine. And thank you, Mary, for your comments on attending our groundbreaking. And last thing was related to John's comments on the weather event. Our building will be just south of where one of the culverts was blocked, and so we're looking at what needs to be done to prevent that kind of blockage and overflow in the future, and anything we can be doing since it runs through our property to take care of that. So we'll be in touch with the fire department, I expect, about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, anybody else? And we're going to turn it over to you, Scott.
All right, good evening, everybody. So this is an annual review of a document we're required to submit to the state annually. It is the local emergency management plan for the town of Hartford. Well, we do have a global emergency operations plan for the town. That's kind of the cookbook on how to handle specific things. This document is the template for somebody coming into the emergency operations center, taking over that position, and can work through guidelines through a template of how to begin operations. It gives you contact numbers, gives you how to build your team, those kind of things, how you can communicate with the public. It's a quick snapshot of what's in the 3-inch document that exists as emergency operation plan. So we have this on file here in Hartford when you adopt it. And it also goes on file with state emergency management, so they can pull that sheet in a statewide emergency and have the contact list for the community and those operations. So I reviewed it with our regional representative from VIII and submitted it to John for review as the town's emergency management director. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have some questions for Scott? Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, well, I guess more of a maybe like recommendation. As I'm looking at it, it does seem like it would make more sense for the Haven's phone number to be listed there. Because of the way it's written, it doesn't actually include contact information for anybody at the Haven. So that might be helpful.
Sure.
And then also Babylon Daycare no longer exists. But in that same building is
Something
T's
else.
Little Stars.
Okay, so it needs to be renamed.
Yeah, and I can an email if you want to put the contact number for that. My daughter went there, so that's why I know. That's why I know that.
That would be great.
And then I guess my question then is, is the intention for like all daycares? Also, I don't think Green Mountain Children's Center exists.
So we did an evaluation early on, and based on flooding and things like that, that's why these were picked as locations.
Okay,
So I'd have to look, because they've been
okay.
on the list for a long time.
that makes sense. Yeah,
Yep.
I would check, Green Mountain Child
And
Center.
I think
as
that's
well.
because of where they are in the flood, in the
Yeah.
drainage area. It was not so much of a concern as others. That's why some got picked, some didn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think those two have changed ownership and contact.
Yeah.
Awesome. Those are my only questions.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two, I think, relatively quick questions.
Sure.
One, Scott, can you explain why the DPW building is identified as the alternate EOC location rather than this building, which seems to tick more of the boxes in terms of the resources available?
So you're
That's
in-
question one. Let me give you both of them because they're going to be pretty quick,
Sure.
I think.
Yep.
And the second one is, about tabletop exercises and whether there's any plan, whether any have been done, and if you could expand on that, would be great.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely. So question number one, this building sits in the floodplain. So it would not be an ideal location for having an emergency operations center. That's why DPW was picked. And actually the new, soon to be new Quechee Fire Station's designed to be a backup as well. So if we need to have a remote location in Quechee, it's being designed to house those kind of things as well. And as far as tabletop exercise, yes, we do them at the emergency management level. And we're planning with Vermont Emergency Management to do one in the fall of this year. I've asked.
Is that the binary blizzard one?
It is not, well, the binary blizzard is happening as a statewide exercise, but it is not the one I intend for us to participate in. But we're in the midst of planning with our regional VEM rep to do one for department heads. Again, we did one with the department heads 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we did a 3-day event with all department heads in conjunction with an ongoing statewide exercise. And the VEM sends down evaluators to participate while they're watching us kind of go through the daily logs of running an emergency operations center.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody on? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I was willing to make a motion, if the board's ready for one.
I think we are.
All right. I move that the select board adopt the 2025 local emergency management plan.
And since we are doing this, we'll do this as a roll call vote since Mike is off.
Is the motion intended to approve it subject to these relatively minor tweaks that we've asked the chief to make?
I would accept a friendly amendment, yeah.
Okay,
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
all right. So then Eric seconds the motion. And so we will start with Ashley.
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Miranda? Aye. Eric?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that is 7-0. All right, so the motion passes and we will then move on to Scott again, writing off the uncollectible ambulance charges.
We do have a short presentation on this one for the new board members. Again, this is another annual process where we write off 1 year of bad ambulance debt and only keep 2 years of accumulating debt on the books as recommended by our auditors. A little bit of background. So the fire department runs a transport ambulance service, which means we bill patients for services, transported patients that are utilize ambulance services in town. And we also provide paramedic intercepts to the community, all by which we're allowed to bill based on rates that are set by the board. All billing we complete in-house. My administrative assistant, Michelle Wheatley, does a great job cranking out invoices and managing all the insurance companies that are involved in ambulance revenue. And we utilize ambulance billing software to maintain this through a company called Tritech. The current rates that are in effect as adopted by the board is a different pay matrix, and these titles are based on Medicare billing. ALS 1 is charged at $900, ALS 2, $1,200, BLS calls, basic life support, $650, and then $16.25 per loaded mile of transport in the ambulance. And then we charge $375 when we intercept with another agency to provide advanced life support. Statewide average for receiving revenue off total billed is around 80%, and we track at about 80%. Last year, I think we were at 82, so we're a little bit above average. In 2024, we estimated $600,000 in developing that budget, and we actually, our revenue showed $821,068.72. To date, almost the close of FY25, we estimated generating revenue about 630, and we're sitting at 825, 547.21 currently. New in 2025, we entered into a contract to assist us in billing patients through insurance companies. As a company called Trizetto, They're a healthcare billing clearinghouse. So basically, we send the claims reports up through the system. It makes the auto connections with all the different insurance companies that are being billed. So basically, what my administrative assistant was doing is having a separate login for 8 different insurance providers. And for every patient that might have insurance, you'd have to log into each system and submit a claim. And then wait for a mail return on the claim denials and then resubmit again. This system allows us to channel all those queries into one request, and that system sends it out to those 8 agencies for us to receive billing on. So it streamlines the process and cuts down on her need to go through over and over again with many different systems. Little bit of how the write-off exists in the first place. So let's talk about how some of the write-off occurs. So when we bill a patient that has Medicare, we're only allowed to receive 80% back from Medicare, co-insurance from the patient, and then the remaining is a mandatory write-off. So in this example, this is a real patient. They were billed by our agency, $1,018.63 for that trip, that treatment and transport to the hospital. We received $415.95 from Medicare. Medicare also paid $77.44 in mileage. We are required to write off $399.38 on that patient. And then the patient is responsible for $125.86. So the patient can either choose to pay that, they're billed directly, or they don't pay. And that also could create some of the write-off in that instance. Medicaid, we receive approximately 51% on a Medicaid patient. The remaining, is mandatory write-off. So in this instance, they're billed $1,013.75. We receive the base rate from Medicaid of $513.54. They pay the mileage of $60.97, and we're required to write off $439.24. The VA pays 100%. So they pay 100% of their approved patient transports. And then private insurance, we bill private insurance in full. We don't accept assignment. An assignment is basically a negotiation. They say, we bill them 1,000. They say, well, we'll pay you within 30 days if you take 800, kind of thing. We don't accept that assignment and change. We make them pay. We recommend them pay in full. We don't do any write-offs for any patient individual. Obviously, you're doing a write-off tonight of an entire balance, but not for individuals. But we do set up payment arrangements. So there are people that come in and pay, $5 a month on the ambulance bill, and that's fine. And we do not use a collection agency. So in this year, our auditor recommends that we leave 2 years of debt on the books. So we developed this process with the finance department to both write off this amount within our ambulance billing software and within the town's accounting software. This year, for the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 was $149,455.90. And I did do the breakdown of where that's coming from. So 64% of that 449,000 is coming out of the private pay section of our billing software. That means the person either didn't have insurance or had insurance and was responsible for a patient amount and chose not to pay, or had no insurance at all. So it became uncollectible. And 14% was made up of Medicare, 18% Medicaid, and 4% from the VA. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good questions, Pat. So if the VA is paying 100%, then why is there 4%?
Yeah, so that has to do with, I believe, the patients that have not 100% listing, it's service connection. Thank you. I was missing that part. They pay 100% of what they're responsible for. So it is based somewhat on service connection.
Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the 64%, Scott, none of that is private insurance companies not paying. It's individuals either not insured or not picking up their portion.
Correct. It means a private party.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Brandon?
Thank you. Chief Cooney, I'm just wondering about the rates that we have set. You say the board sets them.
They do.
I'm just wondering what kind of your opinion is about whether these rates are set, how close they are set to the cost of running this service. Basically, like, are we trying to set them exactly for what our costs are?
No, the answer is no. They're not balanced on cost. Otherwise, I think you'd see this quite significantly higher to recoup 100% of cost. We stay within the regional average. So about every 2 years, I poll the other larger agencies, Hanover and Lebanon, and we all try to get where close to the other agencies are. So I do it more of a regional approach than operational approach. We are typically the lowest in the Upper Valley, though, for fees.
So, so you think the writing off actually is only part of what the town government is actually contributing to the service, the other part being the cost that we're not billing for to run the service.
Correct. Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that. We were recently had to participate in a federal program that was put out by Medicare and to rebalance the structure of reimbursements. So we were asked to submit a 1-year report to Medicaid. It's called a cost reporting document that showed what it truly costs to provide the service. In an example, it was a templated form that we had to submit to the Fed. To my understanding is the impetus for that is to generate changes to how Medicare and Medicaids are funded, to show that true cost is really not represented.
And would you venture a guess? Any sort of, would you say that like it costs 30% more or 100% more than what we're billing?
I believe the budget for the fire department in FY26 is $5 million. And the cost of our revenue for ambulance, actually, I have that number.
And it was just for curiosity's sake.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I actually had that number for another purpose. So our revenue in FY24 was 1,040,400, 1,104. Yeah, excuse me. Geez, 1,042,457. So we're definitely not collecting what we're investing.
Okay. Brent, anybody on? Mike, did you have anything to say or question?
No questions, thanks.
All right. Ashley?
I have a more general question. My question is about the what, I guess, who requires us to do the write-off? Yeah, I don't understand that part about why we're required to write off a certain
I'm gonna
percentage.
invite our finance director up to answer this because this is an accounting practice. And I think what happened is many years ago when we discovered this, our debt on the books was significant. And this is done the correct.
Yeah, Scott's Gail Ostrat, finance director. Scott's absolutely correct. When I came on board 9 years ago, they had not done any write-offs for many moons. And so as we got a new audit firm in and looking at our balance sheet and what needs to happen, they recommended that we write it off. And so the first year I think that we did the write-off, it was quite large because, as you can imagine, it had never been done before. So in order to make sure that you have financial statements that are accurate, you don't want to have carrying a receivable on there that you're never ever going to receive because it inflates your numbers, which then in turn allows you to potentially inflate expenses that you don't need to do.
Thanks. And so a write-off, usually when I think of like a write-off, it's for tax purposes for like an individual or business. Is it a tax write-off?
Town is tax exempt.
I figured that. So I
Correct.
guess I'm trying to understand functionally,
So
where
what
does
is-
that debt go?
It goes away. So what happens on, what will happen if you approve this tonight, tomorrow, the fire department will do their piece in their system, and I, as the finance director, will reduce our receivable that we're carrying on our balance sheet, and then also post the expense of writing it off. The question's been asked many times, how come we don't budget for it? Because we don't know what it's going to be. And by putting the expense in the budget every year, you would be asking taxpayers to pay for something that we don't even know what it is. So if you were to look at the budget book, you're not going to see it because we don't know what it is until closer to the end of the year.
That makes sense. Thank you. And then so any individual person who owes a balance would then receive a letter that they no longer owe that money, or how does that piece work?
I'm not sure how, I don't,
It gets canceled in the system. There's no communication to the individual.
So if they came in and wanted to pay it, would you say no, or would we
no, we
collect
would
that?
take it.
No, we
Okay. Sorry, I'm just like wrapping my head around
Yeah,
It's
it,
from
so
like
sorry.
4 years ago. It's from like what, 2020?
21 to
Right, we're- 'cause
22.
we're
Yeah.
out. Okay.
Yeah, so if
Awesome.
someone was really like, had been waiting on them and
They
then all
were
of a sudden they
waiting.
had the money. But that, I doubt that happens.
No, awesome. Thank you so much. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Okay. Brandon?
I guess my one last question is, does that come from the unassigned fund when the expense? No. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. It just comes out of the budget that was approved.
I was just wondering like where, was there a specific place in the budget that it comes out of? Or-
Are you asking the revenue side where it comes from, or I'm not sure, I'm not following you what you're asking.
Well, you said you post the expense of
Correct.
writing off, in this case, 145,000.
Correct. So it goes to an ambulance GL code for an expense, and then it's the way that it's recouped or accounted for is overall the town revenue. So if we were estimating that we were going to get $6 million in services, then if we have to write off 150,000 of it, that 6 million would be reduced by that amount.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah,
Are you good?
yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Gail. Is there anybody online, Brandon? No. Okay. I will entertain a motion to authorize the town manager to direct the finance director and the fire department to write off $149,455.90 as uncollectible ambulance debt.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ashley.
I move that the board direct the town manager and the finance director to write off the uncollectible ambulance charges.
Is there a second? Miranda has made a second. It is moved and seconded. I will start with Eric. Roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the motion passes 7-0.
Madam Chair, I wonder if it's a good time to ask Miranda if she sees Katie Williams out there. Okay, very good.
All right. Maybe Katie will come next time. Okay, so now Gail's up. So we're gonna get the Q3 financials. Finance director.
Could we turn that air conditioning? Are you good if we turn the air
I
conditioning
tried
off?
turning, I tried doing something with it, but
Thank you.
We just put our sweaters on.
I think it's above my pay grade. I don't really, I don't get it.
Orientation to the.
All right, everybody. Again, I'm Gail Ostrad. I'm the finance director. Welcome to the new board members. I don't think I've been here in person since you've been here, so welcome aboard. A little bit of housekeeping. I'll give you a little bit of background on how this works. You'll see me every quarter You also see me during the budget cycle, but mainly every quarter, once our quarter closes. So the one that we're looking at right now is March. We can't close March until we get through April because we have to wait for everybody to send our bills. So normally I'm on the first meeting following the month, but I had some stuff come up. So you're getting me now. And at the end of each quarter, we look at what our glide path is. And our glide path means how much we've expended throughout the year. So the first quarter, July through September, we want to make sure that we're within 25%. And then when we get through July through December, it's 50%. And now we're looking at March. So our glide path, if we're doing a good job, then we should be at 75% or less. And the last quarter of the year is always exciting and a little bit stressful. You can put those two things together. The reason why I say that is because we have a lot of bond payments that come up at the end of the year, and we don't have any revenue coming in at all. Large revenue, I'll just correct that. So our large revenue that we have obviously is taxes, and those bills go out once a year. They go out in July, and then they're due 30 days. The first installment is due 30 days after that, and then the next installment's due in February. So those are our two huge revenue streams for the general fund. And then we have our regular services that other departments provide that we obviously collect those. So as we're wrapping up the end of this year, we'll be having discussions about what do we have left for funding? Are we meeting where we need to be? And the last board that we had that was sitting gave the town manager and I the directive that if there is salary savings, that we want to take that funding and put it towards the Emerge building, which I believe the town manager spoke about the demolition of that. We also have a shortfall in Station 2 for their equipment that they need there, meaning furniture and fixtures and stuff like that. So we're looking for funding to do that. And then the big elephant in the room literally is this HVAC system in the entire building. It's really, really draining the resources of what we have. And I believe it was a year or two ago, we started depositing funds into the reserve account for this building, and they're dwindling because it's every time that they come, you're looking at 10,000 minimum. And so those are kind of our priorities as we go into the end of this fiscal year, and we'll be keeping you, informed about that. And you'll see me probably in July, the beginning of August, we'll come forward with some encumbrances that we'll be looking for you to approve. And what encumbrances are projects and or purchases for items that are going to cross the fiscal year. We have had lots of supply and demand issues and challenges of actually getting items. I know that Public Works, we ordered trucks for them last year. We haven't gotten them yet. So those are situations where to make a purchase, we need to encumber those funds because eventually we're going to get those trucks. Paving is another thing. If we have departments that have grants that have projects. So just to give you, I know I'm kind of giving you a high level of all the different things, but just to prepare you for when we start having those meetings. I didn't bring my presentation, so hopefully everybody has it in front of you. This is kind of, again, balcony level. I'm happy to answer any questions after I get through each fund, and I'll ask you if you have questions, and that way we can move it along. As I said, we're looking at March of 2025, so we're 9 months into fiscal year 2025 as of these financials were run, and we're looking at a glide path of 75% or less is what we're looking at. So any questions on the overview before? Okay. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the general fund, and that's on page 2 of my agenda item. And so page 2 encompasses all of the revenues and the expenditures for for the general fund. And I have it broke down by department because each department is responsible for their own budgets to make sure that they're executing them accordingly. And so looking at the revenues are a consolidation of all general fund revenues. And as I mentioned earlier, they're billed once and we collect twice a year. So the 2025 budget for revenues for the general fund is 21 million and some change. As of March 31st, we were at 23,500,000. So that number is a little bit higher. That number changes. And the reason why I'm going to say it changes because the school, we as the town collect all of the taxes and then we have to distribute the money to the school for their portion of it. We get cash flow notices is what they're called from the state, and they tell us how much that we need to pay them before the end of the fiscal year. So this year I estimated that we were going to have to probably pay them about 25 million based on historical knowledge. So we're waiting for the final cash flow to come in. And so that number will change. And what will happen is we will reduce it by whatever the amount is, because I can't imagine it'll be less than that. But so the next time we come together, you'll see what the actual revenue amount is. But that's the only thing that will change there, other than you just approved the fire department's write-off. So I know that's a lot, but so then moving on, like I said, I broke it down by department. And this is when we have our monthly meetings and we talk about the financials and where we're at. They're broken down in this manner. The town manager does have the bigger group of them because he takes on all of the ones that don't have a specific department head. So that, that would be the boards and commissions. It would be you as the select board, town hall, cemeteries, health inspection, appropriations. So he's got the bigger one out of everybody. And so when we meet, we talk about, how are you doing? These numbers are high or these numbers are low. Where are you at in your budget? What do you have left to execute? And those are kind of some of the hot topics that we're having right now, because as I said, there are many projects that are going on, that a lot of purchases. Department heads have been paused on doing as many purchases. And the reason for that is because our delinquent tax amount is higher than I would like to see it. And so if we're not collecting those funds, then we shouldn't be spending those. We've been focusing, the town manager and I have been focusing mainly on health and safety items that absolutely have to be done. And then obviously if we have commitments for contracts, those would be the priority for us. Overall, right now, I should say, as of March 31st for this, for the general fund, we're at 77%. And that's not enough of a percentage variance that I would be concerned about it. And so this is where we're at right now for the general fund, and I'll pause there to ask if anybody has any questions.
Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Gail. Public Works spending a little less than their 75%. Is it because they weren't able to get contractors, or are they still catching up on things?
They have that paving contract that once it gets fully executed, they have 500 and, don't quote me, 500 plus thousand that's encumbered for paving. So that's included, or excuse me, budgeted for this fiscal year. And it has a purchase order that goes with it. So it will be encumbered. That'll be one of the things that I'll be coming to you and asking you to approve. That's the biggest thing, is that they have not executed all of their paving yet. Or if it's been executed, we haven't gotten the invoice for it yet.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Gail. We haven't talked about this, but ARPA funds, are they totally, all those, have they totally been used, or there's still contracts that are out there?
They've all been obligated. You did that. The previous board did that last year. And we have 3 projects that I believe the town manager will be having those department heads come in and give you an update, because it's really important for you as a board to stay on top of it, because if those projects fall through, and I'm not saying that they will, but if they do, we actually put a motion in place that we could take that funding and apply it towards the general fund to lower the tax rate. So we need to make sure that we are staying on top of that. But I don't want to speak for other department heads and how they're doing with their projects. I know that as the finance director, I haven't heard any major red flags, meaning the projects haven't been moving forward. But again, I'll leave that to the town manager and those department heads. The budget that we approved has for 2026, I believe has 139,000 or 149,000 that is unrestricted funding that the board approved to apply in July to reduce the tax rate. Now, that was done in January. Every month we gain interest on that account. So that is considered to be unrestricted as well. So we will take whatever we gain from interest from January until June, and we'll apply it when we're setting the tax rate, when we all come back together.
Thank you. Ashley?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the areas where we are either maxed out or negative on spending. There's a few of them closer to the bottom of the sheet, obviously the town hall. I think I understand that's probably the HVAC situation. But for example, the Bugbee Senior Center and the libraries, are those or any of those kind of situations where we do spend more earlier in the year and expenses decrease as the year ends, or are we just going to be?
So great question. So we have several libraries. All of them but one receive a flat appropriation, which is approved by the voters individually on articles.
Mhm.
We have one that receives an appropriation that is handled directly through the town. That means that it's included in the operating budget and the general fund budget, and it's for the West Hartford Library. I don't have their individual budget in front of me, but so they get a certain amount, say they get $150,000 the town has agreed to pay to them. It's their responsibility to make sure that they stay within budget. They are required to follow town policy when it comes to purchasing policy. So what happens is they run their operations, they have garbage disposal, electricity, heating, whatever it may be. They follow the AP schedule, the purchasing policy, send it into the finance department. We code it, take care of it. They're responsible. They receive their financials on a monthly basis as well. So if they're getting close to the end, which I did send Mark at Bugbee a message saying, hey, you're getting close. So it's their responsibility, because once the amount that we have approved in the budget for them to receive, once they receive that, it's their responsibility to pay any other expenses that they have. The same thing with the West Hartford Library. We manage their appropriation for them, and they also receive reports. And once they get to a certain amount, that's it. They don't get any more. And I believe both of those, Bugbee and the West Hartford Library, most likely receive income or revenue from other sources other than the town.
Awesome, thank you.
And then some of the other ones, like the judicial services, we pay that once a year. We're going to pay that in July. That goes to the Windsor County Courthouse, I think is what it's called. And then debt fluctuates. Debt's very heavy at the beginning of the year and very heavy at the end of the year. What else? Transfers and reserves. Those are usually heavy at the end of the year as we get closer to the end of the year, because I don't want to take that money out of the general fund, put it in the reserves if I know that we're running short. That wouldn't be very smart to do. What else here? Yeah, I think those are pretty much all of them that are like above the variance comfort zone that I would be with.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's
Thank
really
you.
helpful.
Anybody else have any questions? Mike, do you have any questions for Gail?
No questions, thanks.
Great.
Okay,
Kim, go ahead.
go ahead, Kim.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thanks. Everything looks great. Gail, I have two questions. One is, could you just elaborate on that, the legal line? Like I presume that's part of the town manager's budget as well, but it shows 0 budgeted and there's something about encumbrances there. Could you just elaborate on that line? And then my other question is, do you have what the amount is for the interest on deposits for as of March 31st for fiscal 25?
So I'm going to defer to the town manager on the legal part of it. I will say there was nothing budgeted in 2025. At the time when the sitting board that we had an encumbrance that we were carrying. And that was the amount of $17,856. And at that time, the board did not add any more to be added to the budget in 2025. And we have expended all of that and more. We've expended the 17 plus another 9,400. And as far as those expenses, I'm going to defer to John, and while he's speaking with you, I will get the interest on deposits. I believe I have it here.
Am I
yes,
still unmuted? Can I just follow up? It looks like there was 25,000 in under legal advice and litigation under 10-141-318. Oh, no, and then the final column is 0. Ah, okay. Thank you. Sorry. Answered my question.
Yes. So to follow up, Kim, yeah, Gail's right. We had some unspent legal funds and we decided that that might be enough to carry us through the subsequent year. It turns out not to be the case. We had some items that came up that were unexpected. So for example, we've spent some money on legal fees to represent not just ourselves, but other towns are sharing in the cost to have legal services to try to monitor the Wilder Hydro Dam relicensing process. So again, each town in the 4 large towns in the Upper Valley are paying a quarter of the legal fees, but the town does have a share of those. Also, we've been engaged in clerical union negotiations. That involves an attorney who has to do a lot of preparation. He's kind of our lead spokesperson during each session. He travels down from Burlington. And so there is some considerable cost associated with that. And we have had a number of personnel matters that have required legal involvement. We did use legal counsel to address and try to mitigate or avoid risks to the town by asking questions and laying out certain scenarios. So all of those involve legal time and that costs money.
You still there, Kim?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and Kim, you asked about interest on deposits. As of March 31st for the general fund, we have collected $427,776.90 in interest.
Cool. So there's some added revenue as well, because I think we only
Correct.
budgeted 50,000 for that.
Well, yeah, 100,000 we did.
Oh, it looked like I only saw 50,000. Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. Brendan?
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up that boards and commissions appear to not be spending all that much money. And just wanted to generally remark that that maybe to the town manager, that we might reach out to the folks involved with those and say, hey, you have some money. Because, you know, these are important arms of our government here. And, you know, the money they decide to spend could be very impactful.
The money that's actually in here, I'm sorry, John, did you want to take it?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll follow
So
up.
the money that's in here for boards and commissions is for stipends. And it was,
I stand corrected then.
yes, and it was, in a nutshell, it was something that was very, very important that we put in the budget, and nobody's using it. I shouldn't say nobody. And they have been, the board chairs, committee members, they've all been notified multiple times that this funding is available. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because when we start the next budget cycle, I hope you as a board take that into consideration of them not being used.
The new budget that was approved for 2026 does represent a significant reduction in line with that actual experience that we've seen.
And as I've been on the board through this, both voting for the stipend, I've noticed in the commissions that I've attended that most of the people want to do it voluntarily rather than taking a stipend. Anybody else have any questions for Gail?
Gail's not done.
I know, just before we move on.
Mhm.
So,
Next section.
right, so if you go to page 13 is a recap of the delinquent tax balance. It gives you the last 3 years in March, and then also I gave you May 19th of this year and last year, because this is when I put them together, so you have an idea. The goal when we get to July 1st is that we like to be $1 million or less, and that's what we're shooting for. And I know that the town manager has been actively working with an attorney regarding tax sales and managing payment plans, et cetera. So I'm confident that him and his department has that under control. The other item that's on here is a local option tax. I put this on here so you have context of what's happened over the past few years, and also what has been committed by the voters. And I started with 2022, we're at 2025 now. Even though I'm giving you the March financials, this is as of May 19th. So it includes the May revenue that we received. And as of April 30th, we had a balance of $618,286.90. Of that amount, you'll see the 5 items that have been committed and approved by the voters. After those 5 items have been executed, we will still have a balance of $107,314 in there that you can take into consideration as we start working towards our next budget cycle, and if there are items that you would like to use that for. Question that's come up many times: if we know that we're going to get 300,000+ a year, how come we don't budget for it? And how come we don't put that much on every single appropriation, or every time that we go to vote? The problem with that is we shouldn't be asking the voters to approve something that we don't have the funds for, because we don't want to promise them $800,000 worth of stuff and then we only get $300,000 in local option tax money. So just to give you an idea of how that whole process works. Any questions on that?
That's
I have
the
a question.
don't
Yeah.
count your chickens philosophy.
In looking at the local option tax revenue history, and of course, we've got the August to be determined. Since every August has been around the 86,000, if we continued along that vein, that would leave us lower.
No, it would leave, if we get another 86,000 in August, it would be the 107 plus the 86.
Oh, okay.
That we would be
carrying the 107.
Yeah.
Okay.
That we would be carrying into the next fiscal year, the
Okay,
budget
thank
cycle
you.
that we're going to be working on in the fall.
Yep. Thank you for that.
Is everybody good with the general fund? And we're going to move on to the enterprise funds?
Yep.
Okay. So the first one we're going to look at is on page 14. It's the solid waste fund, which is Fund 30. And as of March 31st, they have expended 655,000 and some change of their budget, which their budget is only 647,000. So I believe, I always sound like a broken record when we're talking about solid waste. I believe that the town manager and the public works director has a presentation, or will be giving you a presentation regarding the feasibility of that fund, and What the important thing is to understand is that it is considered to be an enterprise fund, so that means it's a business fund. And at any time when any type of our funds have a shortfall, it's the responsibility of the general fund to cover that. So this is something that we look at very closely and want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. I'm hopeful that whatever decision is made for feasibility wise, that we can get it leveled off a little bit and or change what we're going to do as far as some of the bigger tickets that we have. I know that you've voted to remove recycling from there, so that was a huge part of it. Yes,
And stay tuned for Sanborn Head. I think it's the intention of the DPW folks, Brian Gazda, to bring forward. There are several recommended options for the future of the transfer station. Brian and I think, have been looking to get you a reasonable number of options to choose from and to focus on reducing costs wherever possible.
and I'm sorry, I like completely just blew this one, didn't I? It's the revenues that we were looking at first. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. So the revenues, their revenues for 2025 budget is 647,000, and to date they have 655,000. So yes, it's better, but it still doesn't change my mind. I'm very concerned about that fund and where we're going with it and what it's going to do to the community. The expenditures, I got to correct this time. The 2025 budget's 881,000, and as of March 31st, they've spent 606,000 of it. So they're still within the threshold of the variance of where they should be, but again, pay attention to that fund. We need to do something with it. And then I have accounts receivable on here because this was something that prior boards had asked. The accounts receivable for the solid waste facility is 39,000 and some change as of March of this year, and last year was at 6,200. Not too alarming, because depending on when the billing is done, we'll change this. And I know that Public Works has had some changing in staffing there as well, so their billing got delayed a little bit. So I'm not concerned about that amount that we see there in March, especially because I see the money when it comes in. Questions on the solid waste?
Anybody have any questions?
Okay, so then we're gonna move to Fund 50, which is on page 17. So Fund 50 is the White River Water. This is also a enterprise fund. This project, this fund has a lot of projects going on. It has had a lot of projects going on in this fiscal year. It's received a substantial amount of the ARPA dollars. It also has some projects that are coordinated with the TIF department, with the TIF financing district. And then we have water and wastewater revolving loans that we have with the state. So there's a lot going on in this fund, but all good things. So the revenues for this particular fund is 1.2 million, and as of March 31st, it is at 1 million. Again, timing of when the billing goes out, depending on in what community all of you live in, you don't get your bill every month. We switch it off with, so you get a bill every quarter. The expenditures, before I move away from the revenues, the amount that is charged is based on the rates that you as a board approve at the end of this fiscal year that will start in July of next year. So these rates that we have right here that we're billing on are the ones that the board approved last year. And so probably mid next month, the town manager should be coming to you with a fee schedule, which will include this fund as well. Sorry, I'm trying to give you all the background because we have new board members. I just want to make sure you have the background on where this stuff comes from. And And then expenditures, the budget for the entire year is 1.2 million. To date, they've spent 605,000. And then the amount that they have available is 688. This fund I know has bond payments. So that's why they're so much lower than what they are. They have bond payments that they're going to make between April 1st and June 30th. So I'm just to say that. And then as far as accounts receivable goes, last year as of March 31st, it was 266,000. This year it's 247,000. So we're really close there. Questions on Fund 50? So Fund 55 is the Quechee water. Their revenues that were budgeted for 2025 is 515,000. And as of March 31st, they've billed 454,968. Their expenditures for the year is 532,600, and they have executed 330,943 as of March 31st. So they're at 62%. Again, this is an enterprise fund, and I know that they have bond payments. And speaking of bond payments, if you want to know what our schedule is, I would love for you to refer to our audit that is on the town website, and it gives you all of them listed, and it tells you when they're due. So, and it's also in the town report if you would like to look there. Just so you guys don't think I'm like pulling it on my yeah. And then accounts receivable, last year at this time it was 98,000. This year in March it was 102,000. So again, not a huge variance to be concerned with. Questions? Are you guys still with me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, we're almost there. 2 more. So Fund 60 is also an enterprise fund. It's White River Wastewater. And this is also a fund that actually has a lot of projects going on, very similar to what I discussed in Fund 50, which makes sense because it's all in White River. Revenues that were budgeted for Fund 60 for 2025 was 1.9 million. And as of March 31st, they have billed 1.7 million. Expenditures for 2025, they have approved budget of 1.9 million. And then as of March 31st, they've spent a little over $1 million. Broken record, again, bond payments. And then accounts receivable, last year as of March 31st, it was 450,000. This year it's 401,000 as of March 31st. All right, last one. Quechee Wastewater, Fund 65. And their revenues budgeted for 2025 is 1.2 million. And as of March 31st, 2025, they've billed a little over 1 million. And then expenditures for 2025 is 1.2 million. And they have spent 936,000 to date. And again, within the threshold of where we want to be. And then for their receivables, last year it was 270,000 and this year is 269,000. So we're right where we need to be.
Quick question. Do they have bond payments? Because
they do.
Okay.
Come on
they're
now.
right on the glide path, which means then they'll possibly be over?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
They're in good shape.
Okay.
Brandon, did you have a question?
Probably. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess like this was more of a musing where some of these numbers, the percent of the budget used, how you're doing relative to the glide path. When there are bond payments, it seems to throw it off such that this percentage that we're seeing is not really useful to us because. And so I'm just wondering, like, would you ever consider doing, like, let's say there are 2 bond payments per year, you know, to break each of those up into 26 weeks worth each of those
Or
payments.
12 months, yeah.
Right, and then just sort of like assign, based on the quarter, that would be 13 weeks worth. See where I'm going with that? So that we could see a percentage of the budget actually relative to the glide path and sort of estimate like, well, this is the percentage of the bond that would have been paid up to this point had we been paying quarterly.
I can think about that, and how it would potentially work. I can think about it. I can't make any promises, but I understand what you're saying. It's very similar to property taxes that we've talked about in the past. We do one billing a year. So the revenue as of July 17th or 16th, whatever day it is, automatically jumps to 28 million or 15 million or whatever it is. And so how do you break that out to show that you're break it out over the 12 months? So those are discussions that I've actually had, but haven't come up with a solution on how to do it and not skew the financial statements. That's a huge, and I know that I understand what you're saying about the percentage and not seeing the bond payment or I get you. And I understand what you're saying. It definitely could be a work in progress and something that I could work with the town manager on, and then come back potentially with some options that he would approve of.
Or even if not to give the false impression that we pay monthly, but rather 2 times a year, maybe we can just set out those 2 bond payments under that category to give you a sense of scale.
Really anything
Yes.
That's, I just wanted to voice it, to start some brainstorming potentially, in the sense of like, I see where you're coming from in giving us the glide path. You're in trying to be useful to us and the public. And, in the spirit of usefulness, just brainstorming. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Brandon. I think from my perspective or my position as the finance director, giving presentations that are somewhere in between, because I don't want to talk over people, but I also don't want people to feel like I don't think that they can add 2 + 2. So trying to find that balance in between is something that I really struggle with, especially every time the board changes and trying to, meet everybody in the middle. So I appreciate the suggestion, and I'll certainly speak with the town manager about different options, and I could potentially reach out to some of my peers and ask them what are some formats that that would work.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is there anybody online?
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
again, welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Thanks.
Next victim.
Yes. My process of deduction, I know who it is.
We're ready for you,
Okay.
whenever you are, Matt.
All right. So I want to give you a little history. Going back to 2004, the town hired a consultant, received a grant to conduct a bicycle pedestrian scoping study for all of Sykes Mountain Avenue, which is about a mile long and a half a mile segment of Route 5 between Sykes Mountain Avenue and Arboretum Lane. So it was a 1.5 mile segment. And the study came up and recommended that there really should be sidewalks along that entire segment. Since then, staff has applied for a lot of grants to implement the segments. It was broken down into a total of 5 segments. And to date, we've received $2.4 million in grants for the sidewalks along that stretch. Most of Sykes Mountain Avenue has been completed. So now we're proposing to build the sidewalk between Ballardvale Drive, which is right next to Dunkin' Donuts, to Arboretum Lane, which is the entrance to the Upper Valley Aquatic Center. The other segment on Route 5 between Ballardvale Drive and Sykes Mountain Ave through the interchange area, we were on hold because even though we received some grant funding, VTrans did not want to allow a sidewalk with the crosswalk through the interchange area until the interchange was realigned. We were fortunate last year that that realignment occurred with the Route 5 repaving project. So design is resuming on that segment through the interchange area. Regarding this 2,000-foot segment between Arboretum Lane and Ballardvale Drive, on April 8th, we released an invitation to bid. The invitation was advertised in the Valley News, the town website, and the Vermont Business Registry and Bid System website. We received a fair number of inquiries regarding the invitation to bid. And then on the bid opening occurred on April 29th, and we received 2 bids. The low bidder was United Construction Corporation at $430,421. That bid came in $30,000 less than the engineer's estimate. So we were pleased about that. The second bid was over $600,000. We were glad that we received 2 bids. Design engineer Stantec conducted a bid analysis, and they recommended awarding the bid to United Construction. VTrans also approved awarding the bid to United. The sidewalk construction will last approximately 8 weeks and begin after the 1st of July. Construction must be completed by October 15th. The town received 2 federal grants totaling $758,000. The town match is $189,500. In addition, there were 2 property owners that were required by the Planning Commission to build a sidewalk or pay the town for their portion, their frontage for the sidewalk. And that, based on the bids, the bid estimate, it was $64,842. The town greatly benefited by holding off this sidewalk project until after the Route 5 repaving project. So by having the repaving project go first, they took on some of the items that we would have had to pay for if we went first. So that resulted in considerable savings to the town. So I'm here requesting that we award the contract to United Construction Corporation in the amount of $430,421 to construct the Route 5 sidewalk between Ballardvale Drive and Arboretum Lane, and authorize the town manager to execute the contract and other actions necessary to complete the project.
Thank you. Are there some questions? Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you just comment briefly on the timetable or potential timetable for that segment north of Ballardvale Drive, so that can understand when will I be able to walk, for example, from Arboretum all the way to Sykes on a sidewalk?
Yeah, so our consultant at Stantec will be submitting us a scope of work and cost estimate, which we will be bringing to the select board. So the idea is for them to start work on that this year on the design. It's a pretty straightforward project. You know, our goal is, we met with VTrans 6-7 weeks ago, and the idea is that we're hoping to have that segment constructed in 2027.
Okay. Thank you. And just briefly, I was curious, I noticed there were trees and shrubs included in the scope of work. Are there any places in particular where they're going to be, or is there a specific?
Yes, there is a maple tree that will have to come down on the credit union property, and so another tree will replace it.
Right.
And then there are some shrubs on the Super 8 motel property towards the south that will be replaced.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, first, just thank you for moving forward and finding grant funding for this project. I've walked part of that section, and it's definitely very noticeable when the sidewalk disappears. So it'll be on the Dunkin' Donuts side where the current. Okay,
correct.
On that side. And then is there, I mean, the process, I assume this is sort of more of the state, since it's a state road, but in terms of like advocating for crosswalks at any section on that Route 5, is that something that you're involved with, or?
Well, the state has standards, and they require in order to put in a crosswalk, they want it to go from a sidewalk on one side of the street to a sidewalk on the other side of the street.
I see.
So I would think that there's the potential for a crosswalk at the VA entrance.
Right, that would be great.
But would require approval of VTrans.
Okay, well, that's something I would love to see in the future, just to put on your radar, because often people are walking in that area and crossing the road when it's really treacherous to cross right there. Yeah, thank you.
Ashley?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, with the remaining funds, just trying to understand the budget, because it looks like we have more money than we need.
Yes.
What happens? Do we have to return any grant funding? How?
Well, the grant is a reimbursement, so they're only going to reimburse us for what we spend.
Okay.
So we'll use it the way it looks. We're going to use significantly less than what we received in grant award, but our match will be reduced as well. And so the idea is that that money can be used elsewhere.
Makes you wonder about sending a self-congratulatory email with a CC to VTrans, reminding them how cost-effective our projects are and how we'd like to have priority on the next round.
And Matt, have you received, is the contribution from the private citizens in advance or at the end?
In advance.
Yeah, and I can talk to that. What we're doing is setting up agreements with them right now. We're getting the draft language completed. We've done this in the past. I've spoken with Gail about the process that we will follow from the procurement, from the financial end of it. We'll be setting up separate accounts in the town, and they will provide us with the funds up front, and then we will draw down upon them as we construct.
Thank you. Yes, Ashley.
Thank you, Mary. You reminded me of a question that I have I didn't ask. Regarding those property owners, were they what does that process look like? Were they amenable? Like, if I had to pay $30,000 for a sidewalk in front of my house, I'd be up the creek. How did that process go with the residents?
The planning commission made this a requirement of their site development plan approval
many years ago.
Oh, so these aren't just okay. It's not like
so it was
just
back in the 2000s.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Brandon?
Thank you. Given that the match is, or I should say the grants are more than 3 times the match, is there any other work we could do to try to maximize the amount we're getting in grant funding? I know that it's kind of a complex process to tee up work, but in the timeline that these grants allow for, is there any work that could come down the pipeline to maximize the grant funding? Because what it does look like is we're losing out on $600,000.
Well, I think what it is that the state picked up the cost at another point, and if we do not have anything specific, now there could be things that come up in the field. They always do. And there may be some unexpected expenditures. We've already allowed a 5% budget overrun within our cost estimate. And any of those things have to have pre-approval from the state. I would say that if it doesn't have anything directly to do with this project, they're going to recapture it and they're going to reuse it for other communities. That being said, when we needed more money, they were very generous in allowing us and supporting us in getting additional grants when the price went up. So I think it's a fair balance in that. But for example, one of the things that they have said to us that they will help, we have a certain limit of what we are going to do with the different property owners. We said they had to pay for the sidewalks, but the cost of incurring the kind of the general overhead stuff like set up, take down, and all those things. The state is not requiring the individual property owners to do that because it really wasn't in what their agreement was with the town. So they're willing to say, okay, well, for that portion of it, we're going to do that fair share of the state putting towards that. And so that's very generous of them and we appreciate that. But I don't expect that we'll be able to do anything unless it's directly related to this. Now, that being said, I also have a little suggestion that I'm going to be making to them about a crosswalk very shortly. Of this might be the time for them to think about the feasibility of that as an add-on to this. I don't know whether or not we can achieve all of the approvals for that and whether or not they'll agree to that. But we already have heard the concern about crosswalks at that location. And if the state felt that they could in fact do that to meet all of their requirements, that may be a suggestion we can make.
In short, it's because these were grants for this specific project that we described to them. And
yeah, it's all federal dollars too. So it's very specific. Anything that we do up to this point, every single step had to get authorization at the federal level to go on to the next step and the next step. And I seriously doubt they're gonna, and I've never had that happen in all the years, regardless of what's going on at the federal level. It's, if it doesn't specifically relate to the grant for the V-Trans activities, we really have to let them recapture it.
Dennis, did you have a comment?
Yes, please. Dennis Brown of Hartford. This project, I believe, has been going on for many years. And because I think we visited this when I was sitting where you folks are. And I had advocated and didn't get very far. What brought this up for me tonight is all this talk about crosswalks, because I had done a think out of the box thing and suggested that this doesn't happen the way it's drawn out on your plans. It'd be better if it was rooted in back of the Super 8 and come out by the credit union and get off that corner that's right there by the Super 8 and what was the Irving. And that would eliminate your crosswalk dilemmas. But I realize this is really late in the game to make these suggestions, but I did do it many years ago. But that's a narrow corner that you're proposing to put a bike lane through. And there used to be a snowmobile trail to the motel, to the hotels through that swamp that's in the back. I realize it's a wetland, but I'm sure a ramp could be built or something. And that would get everybody off Route 5 and avoid all that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Peter?
And as someone who lives in that.
Peter, why don't you give your name and
I just didn't want to put anyone's ears out. And if Pete Zandron, as someone who lives in that neighborhood, I mean, did they take into consideration that there are many people there who have flashbacks and who have mobility issues because the bike lanes are a menace enough for people for those of us trying to avoid it, because this is what I've said before. It's the same problem is with the proximity to the VA that I've seen happen in Newport and New London. you're either gonna have someone get hurt as a result of not being able to move out of the way of like a bike or a scooter or something in the middle of time, or you're just gonna cause someone a flashback and kick someone's ass. And speaking of which, when you mentioned the Super 8, I mean, as it is, I mean, me and some other people were given housing priorities in that region for specific reasons. And it seems like at that Super 8, they've been getting quite a few troublemakers. Being just about a week ago, we had some people that really had caused the concerns of the people at the Dunkin' Donuts who were working there that night. And we took a walk by there. I mean, we were itching just being on the street side right over by that Super. I mean, it seems like with what's going on with the voucher program, I mean, the ones who are getting their act together are over at the White River and some of the others. But that Super 8, I mean, I even had to share with people at the 8 and at the Haven. Basically, some people who've not only pulled scams with the voucher program, but even been kicked off the VA premises for pulling scams over there. So the construction, it's gonna affect people with mobility and flashback issues. And you do also have some potential danger of some people in that area who just don't know how to behave themselves.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions? All right, there is a motion, a recommendation in front of you for awarding the contract to United Construction Corporation.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Brandon?
I move that the board direct the town manager to award the contract to United Construction Corporation in the amount of $430,421 to construct the Route 5 sidewalk between Ballardvale Drive and Arboretum Lane, and authorize the town manager to execute the contract and other actions necessary to complete the project.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ida. We will do the roll call vote. I'll start with Ashley this time.
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Miranda? Aye. Eric?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the motion passes. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
And we're on to the next one.
We're on to the next one. So federally funded projects require construction engineering oversight. There's some cost to it, but it's a good thing in that anytime that the contractor or subcontractor is out doing work, there's some oversight taking place. VTrans recommends utilizing the at the ready process to hire a consultant. It's a pre-qualification process that it was established in the 2010s. It's basically a pre-qualification process where engineering firms apply to the program to be identified as a pre-qualified engineering firm to work on these federally funded projects. Only 6 firms are selected. They do this every 3 years. The last time they did it was in 2023, February 2023. And then the engineering firms will have to go through the same process next February as well. So in VTrans experience, these are the best, most qualified and competent engineering firms, which have an excellent record of completing projects without problems. So this program has been very successful. And use of this state's pre-qualified list is an alternative to a town bidding process and is allowed under section 3.8 of the town's purchasing policy. So as far as the selection process, the town is required to select 3 firms to review their qualifications. And this 3 out of the 6. In this particular case, Stantec, we could not select them because they're the design engineer for the project. So a subcommittee comprised of Chris Hallsworth from DPW and myself reviewed the 3 statements of qualifications and came up with a prioritized list. so we did a rank order of the firms, and then asked for a scope and fee proposal, and Du Bois and King submitted that. The submittal was reviewed by the town and VTrans, and both are recommending awarding a contract to Du Bois and King. So the reasons why we suggest selecting Du Bois and King are that, so they're one of the 6 pre-qualified firms that have been vetted through VTrans, the Municipal Assistance Bureau. They have demonstrated extensive construction engineering expertise and experience. They've worked in over 100 VTrans Municipal Assistance Bureau projects. Du Bois and King are very familiar with the town of Hartford. They have a good working relationship with the town of Hartford. And their fee proposal came in at $87,195, which was below the $90,000 budget that we had for the project. Our recommendation is to waive the requirement of section 3.6 of the town purchasing policy and procedure for competitive sealed proposals for contracts over $20,001 as authorized by section 3.8 of the town purchasing policy and procedure to utilize the VTrans at the ready process to hire a consultant. Award the contract to Du Bois and King in the amount of $87,195 to provide construction engineering oversight of the Route 5 sidewalk project, and authorize the town manager to execute the contract and other actions necessary to complete the project.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions from Matt or Lori? Brendan?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, do you recall how many hours did they said they would be using, or do they not break down?
No, they did break down the hours. The inspector is listed as 390 hours, so they would be there full-time and possibly overtime if necessary. The project's estimated at 8 weeks, so their budget is based on 8 weeks of work. There is a construction manager overseeing the inspector, and that's proposed for 79 hours. And then there's 30 hours of administrative support. So it's a total of 499 hours.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
If the board's ready for
All
a
right,
motion.
we will go ahead with it.
All right,
Eric?
thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you want this in 2 parts or all in one motion?
Well, for this particular activity, yeah.
Yeah, but it has, because it has, one is waiving the requirement and one is
Yes.
awarding the contract. Do you want it in 2?
It'd probably be clear that way.
Okay.
Okay, well then, thank you. Taking the first part, I move that the board waive the requirement of section 3.6 of the town purchasing policy and procedure for competitive sealed proposals for contracts over $20,001 as authorized by section 3.8 of the town purchasing policy and procedure to utilize the VTrans at the ready process to hire a consultant.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ashley has seconded that. Let's start with Mike.
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, so that motion passes 7-0. Let's go on to the next one. You want to do that too, Eric?
Why not?
Why not?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the board award the contract to Du Bois and King in the amount of $87,195.00 to provide construction engineering oversight of the Route 5 sidewalk project and authorize the town manager to execute the contract and other actions necessary to complete the project.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Is there a second?
Second.
I will go with Mike. Sorry. All right, thank you, Mike. Let's start with Ashley.
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ida,
Aye.
Brandon,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
and Mike,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. Okay, 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Lori.
All of
Thank
you.
Yes, thank you.
And Matt and Lori for staying late.
Thanks for,
Probably is a good idea to take a recess for just 5 minutes so we can take a break. I know Samantha had to go before, so I think.
thanks to Lori and Matt for bringing us all that great federal grant money.
I know, it's really terrific. You guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's be back here at 8 o'clock sharp.
Mayor said she would try, but I haven't seen it.
Oh.
Yes, there, yep.
Okay, we are back and we are on agenda F, consider request for permission to hang banners on telephone poles. And that is you, Dennis.
It's probably even a little more nuanced than that. It's really more permission for Dennis to act on behalf of the town to work with GMP about getting access to their poles. But Dennis can speak to it for himself, of course.
Thank you. Dennis Brown of Hartford again. Yes, what the town manager said is pretty spot on. The way that was listed on the agenda is to get permission to hang banners on, it's actually light poles, I think, but in any case, that's a bit inaccurate. What we're actually asking for is the town support in installing the physical brackets on GMP, Green Mountain Power light poles. And because we already have permission to hang the banners. What's needed now is the town's backing to move forward with an agreement with GMP that would allow brackets to be installed on power poles along Route 5 in Wilder. They won't sign an agreement with a committee. They require town authority to sign their agreement. This request directly supports the new village beautification efforts the town is pursuing, and these brackets would serve as infrastructure that any group could use in the future under the existing banner policy. In addition, we'd like to request GMP's permission to install brackets on a few of their light poles in other villages at the same time, so we don't have to go through the process more than once. The first group to use these brackets might be the banner committee, or it might be another organization. It'll depend on who seeks permission under the banner policy. Will the select board support this?
Thank you, Dennis.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just so I understand exactly what we're talking about. Back in January, you came before the board and asked for and received their permission to hang banners in several villages, White River, Wilder, and Hartford, between May 17th and July 17th of this year. Were you able to put those banners in town-owned poles in Wilder, or is this what you're seeking the permission to do since there are no usable telephone poles or light poles in Wilder?
Well, sort of. What it is we're still evolving with this banner business. And I didn't realize that along Route 5, those are all GMP poles, not town poles. And so that was discovery. And it's getting late in the game for this year, but I'm here mainly for next year or years beyond. And so, yes, I was hoping to get the brackets to be put up in the future in Wilder and others. I'll probably look at Quechee and all the villages to apply when we do this Green Mountain thing, get it all down so that that process will be done. And Green Mountain Power has been extremely supportive. I was surprised because in so many organizations, it's always quick to say no, but this person I've talked to, this Jennifer Denton, I believe her name is, of Green Mountain Power, she's the attachment director, attaching things to poles. And she's been extremely helpful and immediate response when I've asked. And so I figured to get this started, they might want to do a trial of a few months or maybe a short few years. Their thing is they come up with this application and it's indefinite. So it doesn't go through that. And so it was just a lot of good news and support. It's just that I'm not a town employee, so I asked the town manager about this, and I think he did the right thing is putting it before you folks, so there's no surprises. So we could have, I would be happy to be the agent, but I don't work for the town, so I'm a volunteer, so I don't think that would really be right. So I was thinking that somebody like the town manager, if he's willing, or the rec director or somebody would just sign this so we get going on it and it'd be done.
Just again, for purposes of clarity, the town adopted a banner policy in response to previous request from the Hometown Heroes group to hang banners on town-owned light poles. So this is a little different.
Yes, as you may be aware, we've got town poles, we have state poles, and we have GMP poles. So it's possible that we could venture onto the, if we ever elect to use state ones, then we would go, we'd ask again for permission for that. The state gave us permission to put the US flags on, and they had a thing where they, a trial of 3 years. This is the 3rd year of that, I believe. And so I sort of halfway expected the same thing from GMP, but they said this person that I've been corresponding with is indefinite.
Yes, Ida.
Thanks for bringing this to us, Dennis. Is there any cost from GMP to put up these brackets? Or
No,
charged?
the volunteers would be doing that. It wouldn't be
Okay.
any.
The committees purchase the brackets through your own funds, and then you'd be doing the work to install them as well?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's in their agreement where they can't be harmed, or it's a lot of legal this or that, as you might imagine, but it's somewhere I think it says it won't cost GMP anything. It's a no-brainer. I never suggested it would. Thanks for the question.
I'm sorry, Randy, you had a question?
Please.
Yeah, so just for like clarity purposes, the application so essentially what is being proposed is that we would say, yes, John Haverstock can sign this application to put brackets on the poles. Is that, am I following?
Yeah.
The town manager designee, I would imagine the town manager, well, every department head's busy, but I can imagine he might want to have Scott or somebody else do it, but that's up to him. He's in charge.
Then the question is, I know in the past, the select board has had concerns about whether by approving banners to be hung on town light poles, that was somehow an endorsement of one particular group's views such that we might be concerned about that. This is a different issue. This is authorizing the town manager working with Dennis to go forward with GMP. So if they're GMP poles, arguably in my mind, that might be an issue for GMP endorsement issues to be worried about. And they apparently are not worried about it.
From my understanding, once we sign this application, so would have to do a lot of legwork because in the application, they want to know the number of each pole that you want to put something on. And then if I read correctly, they send somebody out afterwards to kind of like check and inspect this. I assume to make sure that they wouldn't be in the way or some such thing. And so if there were any issues, they would raise them at that time. I don't expect there would be, but.
Ashley?
Thank you. I was just wondering the number of polls you're hoping to do and then what the bracket looks like.
It'd be the same brackets that are on the town poles.
Okay.
There's two. Well, the ones that are downtown were there anyways, that came with the TIF project. They put them on then. For along Veterans Park, there weren't any of those poles, so we bought brackets and put up there. The brackets are 4x2 foot, and so there's a 2 foot bar that sticks out on the top and another one on the bottom to hold the bottom.
Okay.
And as far as how many, I don't know. The project keeps growing, and last year we had 10. This year we put up 25, and so I don't know what next year will bring, but it's kind of somewhat quickly evolving. It's had a lot of interest.
But you're not talking, I guess I'm just trying to get a sense, like, is this gonna be like every light pole on Route 5? Or is it like one every, 5 light poles? Or just because I'm thinking about the fact that these will be permanent fixtures. And that, yes, that under the banner policy, anybody who applies to put a banner could presumably put that number of banner. I don't want to say like have an overwhelming number of banners on one strip.
And keep in mind that the town's banner policy has a 60-day limit, or 2 30-day limits, I should say. Whereas presumably GMP can allow banners to be hung for any period of time, right? They haven't given you any indication of how limited your exposure would be to the public, right?
No, it doesn't have that.
Oh, interesting.
And as far as putting them on every pole, that's never been my desire anyways. I have tried for years, even before I was a select board member, to get some welcome to Hartford signs, banners. We had them during the 250th, the Hartford's 250th back in 2011. And I've thought it would be neat to have welcome to Hartford, maybe one of the hurricanes on it, the Hartford Hurricanes. Another one could say, Hartford, 5 villages, 3 rivers, 1 town. Yeah, and get some jam ones. In the downtown now, we're going to have hanging flower pots. And I thought that would intermix with all that to just pretty things up. So it's never been my desire to plaster these all over in one. I actually think it'd be better if they were spaced out with something in between, either a blank pole or the welcome to Hartford or some such thing. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Miranda?
So because these are GMP poles, does would they be going through the town banner policy to hang banners there, or would that be out of our jurisdiction on what is hung on the brackets?
I don't think that we have any control over what GMP's requirements are for usage of their poles.
But John, sorry, but the banner policy is the town's policy.
It's a town's policy that governs town light poles and what can be hung on them.
Yeah, maybe to add to that is we had asked about this because we'd had a person or group that owns a large chunk of downtown inquire about putting them on private buildings, and that wouldn't go with the town banner policy either if we did that. If they want private buildings.
Essentially, the GMP folks are going to be the hosts of these additional banners. That's what I gather from Dennis.
What? Sorry, Ashley, wait, Brandon.
Thanks. I have some concerns about the idea that we would endorse a program of potential banner hanging, judging by the brackets that we would approve, that we wouldn't have any control over. It seems as though the banners hung on GMP poles would not be subject to our banner policy. We would not, like banners hung on GMP poles might be subject to some kind of policy by GMP, but I just worry that if we approve these brackets, that we would then have, some poles in the town that we can't say anything about what goes on them or for how long.
Miranda?
Mike has his hand up.
Yes. Tell Mike to go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I mean, what I would want to do is make sure our policy, the town banner policy, is written so that it's all encompassing, right? Like we decide what gets displayed like big banners, on the public like roads and streets, things like that, and not, I mean, because I think the concern is like, look, with the point of our banner policy was to try to get some control over what is displayed publicly, how long they're up, everything like that. And if that can be gotten around essentially by any group just by hanging it with Green Mountain Power, I think it sort of undermines the whole policy. So I'd want to make sure that our policy is written in a way where it makes clear that it also is intended to govern the display of banners on, privately owned telephone poles, town-owned lights, things like that. To the extent that we can do that.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't know that we can do that, but we can certainly seek legal guidance on whether the town can dictate to GMP that it implement or acknowledge, or I'm sorry, defer to town policy on their telephone poles.
So, Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The application is not included in the packet. Is that correct? I've looked for it and haven't seen it. So we.
The one that, you mean the application for town light poles?
The application to Green Mountain Power.
Oh, no.
To.
That is just an email thread between Dennis and I.
Okay, I just want to make sure I hadn't missed that. So if we moved ahead with this, we haven't actually seen the application or any of the language in it. Have you, Mr. Town Manager?
I think I have seen it. No, I have not. What I have seen is the email thread, which continues between Dennis and GMP representatives, which give me an idea of what it contains. But no, I haven't seen the application.
Okay,
form.
thank you.
So I'm wondering if we need to table this until
Well,
discussion.
the good news is from Dennis, this is maybe proposed with an idea, with an eye to the future. And hopefully, if we were to research this and get some good feedback as to what authority the select board has on, third-party telephone poles and what they can fly, we can revisit the issue and invite Dennis back.
I want to say that I did send the application, but I can send it again, but I thought I did, but.
It may be, Dennis, but I don't recall it. That's all.
You get a few emails?
I do get a few.
Yeah.
Even from us.
Okay.
Is that amenable to you?
Yeah, I'm at your pleasure. I mean, if you haven't seen the application, it's pretty simple, actually. Let's table this. You make that decision, but probably table this and review it, and we'll come back, I guess.
Would you have a public comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kim.
Go ahead, Kim.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Just wondering if there's been any activity around the BLCT's model policy for flags and banners?
I know that we received their long-awaited guidance, and it's been kind of in our back pocket, waiting for a future opportunity to discuss it.
This might be a good time when the application for Green Mountain Power comes, that this would be a good time to discuss the VLCT, because I know that I had been making a lot of my decisions based on waiting for VLCT,
and so July 17th is the end date for the current banner hanging, so that might be a good opportunity.
So that, I think your question is appropriate, Kim, and thank you for that. I think we do need to revisit and have the opportunity for all the board members, especially the new people, to look at our policy and compare it to what VLCT says. And in the meantime, we can still do the research on this Green Mountain Power application. Thank you. Anybody else on? So I need to table, whoops, I'm sorry, Ashley.
When this does come back to us, it's still not clear to me as to whether the town is requesting or applying to install a bracket or to install a banner. Because to me, from the email chain, it reads like you need to get a temporary attachment agreement for the banner. And maybe they have a permanent fixture. But that you still need to apply to, no, that's not.
No, this isn't a banner request, it's a bracket request.
Okay, yeah, I think having, I don't know if the temporary attachment agreement is the same as the application. Then we'll get it, but if that is a separate document, can we make sure we have that in our next packet when this
The way
comes out?
their application reads at the top of it is temporary attachments, flags, banners, etc. License agreement between Green Mountain Power and Town and City of Hartford, Vermont.
Right, I just am confused about how that is a permanent bracket.
The bracket, I would think the bracket is permanent and the banners can come and go.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Having that attachment, I think next time will be really
Mhm,
helpful
yeah.
to flesh out.
We'll get that to you.
Awesome.
All right. Brandon?
Thank you. I would be in favor of what Mike has described, as I understand it, which is I would be in favor of this adding brackets, and thank you to your group for providing them.
Yeah.
Proposing to provide them. If and only if GMP allows us to implement our banner policy to govern their polls.
I can't imagine that any company would do that. I just can't. I understand where you're headed with that, but I mean, they're granting us the permission to use the poll, and for them to have an extra burden of policing that, I just can't envision that they would welcome that.
I think this is a point at which we need further information in order to make any kind of decision. So sorry you had to make the trip here, but.
Oh, it's been fruitful. We've moved the ball forward.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion to table this? Or?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, well then I will go ahead and make the motion to table the consideration of the request for permission to hang banners on telephone poles.
I think it was a light pole. Dennis.
Right, I'm sorry.
Power pole.
On power poles.
Ooh, that sounds scary. Is there a second?
Second.
Miranda seconds. Mike, you wanna vote?
Aye.
Okay, Eric?
Aye.
Miranda? Aye. Ida?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
And I vote aye. 7-0. All
Thank you,
right.
board members.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Thank you, Dennis.
Dennis.
Okay, so we are updating on proposed Bugbee committee membership and bylaws.
Yes, originally I had written this to approve the list, but we're not quite there yet. I'm told Mark is making good progress on his recommended members of the Council on Aging board member and a frequent user of the Bugbee Center. I can report that Fire Marshal Tom Peltier has consented to sit on this committee, and we now need a select board member at some point to express interest. Very good. If that's the will of the board, next time we come before you, which I hope is in 2 weeks, we should have a more complete slate for you to consider, and identifying how many of them are Hartford residents. And then we also hope to have further discussion when we come back about these draft bylaws, which I have tweaked just a bit to reflect the last discussion 2 weeks ago, which was to not limit it to simply selecting a preferred option as identified by the architects, but making recommendations about the options and related matters. So I think that gives the future committee some latitude to make other recommendations about the future renovations of the building. And that's the update.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for John?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
thank you. I will renew and restate my concern that I stated the last meeting, that this constitution or proposed constitution is town staff heavy, in my opinion, and Hartford Public Light. I think the proportion of staff members here is significant. And one of the things I recommended when we spoke about this last was to entertain the possibility of taking some of those staff members and making them, designating them as consultants to the committee and backfilling those positions with members of the public. And so I just wanted to restate that. I see that the concern that I had about the percentage of Hartford residents has been addressed. It did raise a question about, we spoke last time about the percentage of users for the facility. Maybe about a third of them were non-Hartford residents. And I wasn't after that meeting, I was thinking about this and I wasn't sure whether we were on the same page in terms of the cost proportions being broke down by operations or for the capital. In other words, if this is a capital project of let's say, $3 million to make the numbers easy, and would we expect 1 million of that to be picked up by other towns, or is Hartford and Hartford taxpayers funding the full 3 million, and that would influence my my thinking about the percentage of Hartford residents that should be included in the committee.
I think Mark at the last session gave us the impression that it might not need to be all town resources that are devoted to a renovation, but that there might be funding within his sphere, which is the Council on Aging, or visiting towns who also, I think, make some contribution to their operating funds as it is now. But I don't see why that issue couldn't also be discussed by this committee. But
And it does say an incomplete list of proposed committee members. So I'm assuming that he is already reaching out to.
Yeah, he says that he has a couple of Hartford residents in mind for representation of his board and a frequent user of Bugbee. Certainly, I'm sure Mark and I would be both open to taking staff away from sitting membership. But I mean, I need to hear from the full board. I can't just act on the input of one select board member. So if I had some consensus in one direction or another, I'd be happy to go.
And I was concerned, my only concern, and I'm sure Mark would address this, is that whatever meetings occur, they don't all occur at nighttime because elderly people don't like to drive at night. I think, there could be some variation.
Yeah.
But
although at the same time, somebody made the point that it'd be nice to have regularized meetings so people in the public would know when to expect them to take place. So
one doesn't the other, right? And did you have another question, Eric?
No, I think I'll leave it at that, but I would ask the chair to maybe take a straw poll on the first point that I made about the Constitution being staff and town representative and staff heavy versus public, and the sort of recommendation of maybe making 2 of the staff members consulting members, not voting members, and backfilling those positions with members of the public who are then voting members.
Okay.
Could I ask whether you had some mechanism in mind by which to select members of the public to sit on the committee?
Yeah, that's a very fair question. I've watched meetings from the other side of the fence where this process is transpired, and there's been applications So like any other committee, the public is notified of the potential, and applications are solicited. Applications then come before the board, and I think in some scenarios, applications are reviewed and discussed in executive session, maybe. But so that's one way, and I know that adds that adds a latency to the whole process. The other potential would be nominations from the board, or yeah.
That's an interesting concept. Straw poll. Eric would like, any thoughts about how you feel about Eric's proposition?
Start with me?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I do think it's between town staff and the organizational staff of the Council on Aging, it feels like that makes up a pretty large majority of the committee.
Mhm.
And I would like to see more just residents, folks who use the center, just various different perspectives, because I think we have the town staff available for consultation, whether or not they're voting members of the committee, because I think they're important. I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly bring a lot of expertise that a layperson might not have, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So I would say that I do agree with Eric's proposal.
Brandon?
I also agree in principle. I wonder whether there's any mechanism by which to fund a capital project, get funding from other towns, or other townspeople, people from other towns. I'm all ears, but I don't know of any. So I guess it would probably be, unless someone would correct me, I guess it probably would be the townspeople of Hartford, funding a bond or something. But I think there might also be other, not similar because ours is the best, but other senior centers in the region that our townspeople are also welcome to frequent. So there's a bit of a reciprocal thing going on. But, I guess it comes down to, are we proud to have the best one?
I
I think I do agree with this idea to have 2 staff members move to consulting roles and to replace those with residents, community members who are involved with the Bugbee Center. I think to respond to Brandon, from what I understood from what Mark said last time, there's designated contributions from other towns that are part of the Bugbee's budget.
Right.
So I think what he was suggesting was that there might be some proportional contributions to a larger project based on what other towns are already kind of written in to contribute annually to the Bugbee Center. I don't know, the proportional part I just made up, so I don't know if that's what you're thinking, but I think that's my impression, that they make contributions on a regular basis, and so his hope would be that there would be contributions that happened.
And grant funding, fundraising, philanthropy, other options.
I see, yeah. I think my one reservation is that when Mark was here and we brought this up, he did sort of, I don't know if he pushed back, but he did respond by saying, like, I like the list. So I wish he was here to comment, but I think if we sort of reiterate that the staff members were still ideally going to be, heavily involved and available, just that we would like to replace a couple with their voting power with some people that aren't necessarily employed by the town or the Council on Aging, then that would be what we recommend.
Okay.
Thank you, Ida. Miranda?
So, I support Eric's idea.
All right, thank you. And Mike?
I support the proposal. I'm sorry. I support the proposal as written in the packet. It's a town building. I think the town staff should be on it and have voting rights.
All right, thank you. And I have, I understand where Eric's coming from, and I do believe that residents will step up. I would gladly, if I was on that committee, I would gladly give up voting privileges. I think that's okay. So I think it sounds like most of us as straw poll support understanding, the ability of people, but then there's little sidebars that are not necessarily we're in agreement about who pays for it, who's it benefit and everything. So
Right, and these, again, can be discussions that
Yeah.
the committee itself has. So I think I do see a consensus on, in support of Eric's idea. It's perfectly fine with me. I'll communicate it to Mark Bradley, and he and I will hopefully come back to you at a next meeting with a more finalized slate and with a commitment, as we've tried to emphasize, that the committee, however constituted, will also be expected to reach into the community for community input as well.
And I know, like a lot of towns do this. If a person comes, makes use of it, sometimes the residents get a lower cost than non-residents. And so, there are a lot of options out there to work with. But I do think that there's, the majority of people will be probably benefiting the Hartford people. All right, thank you, John. So
Sure.
we are on to the continued discussion of facilities tours and select board training.
Yes. I guess we should start with the easier stuff, maybe the two tours that we have in mind for the DPW building
Right.
and for public safety. I guess the first discussion we could have is DPW's work hours are 7 to 3 on weekdays. There has been a reference in the survey responses to afternoons on Wednesdays and Thursdays being best, but I don't know if those same survey respondents could go for a 60-minute tour as early as 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, or whether maybe, given that that's kind of in the middle of the afternoon, people might prefer a 7 to 8 opportunity. That way, at least you're interacting with staff as opposed to coming maybe after 3, in which case you'd only see Brian Gazda, who might be persuaded to come out and give you the tour. So I'd be happy to open it up to discussion about how we can get the most people who want to go on a particular day of the week and at a particular time.
Yeah, I think that's important. I did go on my own when I first came. It's great, but boy, it takes away at least one person from doing their work. So it would be important to, make sure that a few people at least could go. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I could do at 2 p.m. or 7 a.m. 7 a.m. feels like a heavy lift. I don't know. What are other people?
Okay.
I could make it happen if everybody else felt like that.
Stop at
was-
Dunkin' Donuts and get your coffee.
Yeah, it would give me an excuse to go to Dunkin' Donuts. So yeah, either one would work for me. And Thursday would be the better day.
Okay.
Well, you're providing Dunkin' Donuts. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll bring. Hope you guys like munchkins.
So Ashley, for Thursdays, 7 or 2. Right? Anybody else who's expressed interest in the DPW tour, let me know how these work for you.
All right, what is the date? Thursday,
We don't have a date. We're just told in general,
Okay.
those are the best days of the week for them, Wednesdays and Thursdays.
John, anytime works for me.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
My schedule's pretty flexible. I just need to know in advance. the
Sure.
date.
Notice makes a lot of difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I could make either 7 or 2 work on a Thursday. I don't know, I might prefer the early morning one. But I could make either work for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think beginning of the day or the end of the day makes the most sense. I would opt for the 7 a.m.
Sorry.
And a rain day preferably.
Yeah, yeah.
You can do that.
Well, that should be pretty easy.
Yeah.
7 a.m.
Was an option. option, 8 a.m.?
7 to 8.
Oh, 7 to 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be 8, but I imagine people who have to get to work are probably doing so by 8. I don't want to,
8 would work for me.
Yeah,
I'm sure could work for
8
them.
would be better for me.
All right. So it sounds like people with some notice can make it happen on a Thursday at 8.
It would work.
Oh, is that too late for you, Eric?
6 to 7 would be nice. I
Has the phrase herding cats come to mind?
Right. I can be pretty flexible. I think the main point is the beginning of the day, at the end of the day. And if I'm a little, could start later, leave early kind of thing. So yeah, I can make 8 work.
It sounds like a preference, 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning.
Yeah, and Mike, I don't know how you're feeling, if you've gone through all these tours before. So,
If I get enough notice of what day it is, I can probably make the time. So, it's about settling on a date, I think. Date and time.
Yeah. Good. So I think that's been accomplished. We'll pick a date and notify people. Next would be police and fire and dispatch at the public safety complex. You saw some of those emails, June 11th, June 16th, June 17th, starting at about 3 o'clock. Those were the dates that both chiefs have available to provide their portion of the tour. And it'd probably be about a 90-minute tour based on the one we did last year.
I brought them cookies, but you don't have to do that.
Yeah, any of those work for me.
Public safety?
Yeah.
I attended it last year, so I'm gonna stand back from the scheduling discussion.
Okay.
I'll attend if I can, but I won't weigh in.
I think Brandon was there as well.
Yeah.
I will probably also abstain.
Yeah. So Miranda, Eric.
I think the 11th or the 16th work better for me, but I can do the 17th if need be.
Yeah, I think I can make any of those dates work. Yeah, they're all workable.
Okay. So 3 to 4:30, something like that?
Yeah.
With some notice.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Very good. All right. And then as to training, I certainly don't want to be an impediment. Sometimes I feel like I'm more of an obstacle than a facilitator on this issue of select board training. I don't want to be. Maybe we can focus at least on what we seem to have agreed to, which is the morning session offered by VLCT. It sounded like that could work as half of a day. And then maybe the discussion tonight is what you'd like to do for the second half of the day on an upcoming Saturday, with Saturday, June 14th, looking as the best likelihood if that works for people.
I couldn't do 14th in the morning, unfortunately.
I'm also unavailable on the 14th.
Okay, we haven't gone out to July, but I'm mindful of Eric's desire to move the process along. For some reason, they can't do the 7th. And then we have Juneteenth on the 21st. And we have something else on the 28th.
Alumni parade.
The alumni
There's one other
parade.
thing, yeah, which Mike and I.
So that takes us to July, I'm afraid.
So.
Then the
I'm
question is
free in
again.
July at any
Yeah.
time.
I've asked them to provide dates not to include the July 4th weekend, which is July 4th, falls on a Friday, but the 12th, 19th, 26th of July. So before we get into the meat of the afternoon session, do those dates work for everyone for a training? Saturday, July 12th, 19th, 26th?
I will also be out of town on the 12th. Will
Okay.
not be available, but the
I
19th.
can only do the 12th. I got a thing on the 19th, and then I'm gonna be on vacation the next week.
Are they only available to do it on Saturdays? Would people be opposed to a Sunday?
Well, thus far we did Saturday because it seemed like the preference was to do it on a single day. I hadn't considered Sunday simply because it's Sunday. Some people don't want to do things on Sunday.
I could do a Sunday.
I don't know if VLCT can do,
Yeah.
but I can certainly ask them about it.
But that'll probably leave Mike out if he's on vacation.
Well, we instead of like July, instead
do a
of
Sunday in
instead of these
Oh,
June dates.
yeah, I could do that.
Yeah,
So Saturdays in June,
Sundays.
Sundays, I'm sorry, Sundays in June.
I can do.
And I will be gone the 15th, which is the same, yeah, the 14th and the 15th, I'm out of town. I can't do June 8th.
You can't do June 8th? Okay.
Sunday. So we're gonna 22nd, 29th. pretty much.
22nd, 29th. Does anybody have a veto on either of those Sundays? Okay. I can certainly communicate that to
I
them.
will note that, I don't know if anyone's going to the Quechee Hot Air Balloon Fest, but it is on the 22nd too.
Oh.
Maybe John is.
Would that be a deal breaker for anybody on missing the Quechee Balloon Fest?
No.
Okay, so maybe we'll look at the 22nd and 29th, and I'm more than happy to either, if the wishes of the board are that Eric talk directly with Alex Torpy about the afternoon session, that's perfectly fine with me. Maybe I'm mistranslating what I'm hearing from you. So let's have that discussion. What would you like to do in the afternoon?
May I kick that off, Madam Chair?
You may.
Thank you. I guess what I'd like to be able to do is walk out of the room with some deliverables in hand, and one of those deliverables answers the question, what's on the board's plate for the next 9 months or so. That's the sort of the nature, if we just sort of distill all of the, project manager kind of mumbo jumbo down. It's like, what are we doing for the next 9 months? What's the roadmap, the direction? And how full is our plate? So that's a really critical question. And I had that in the proposal that I put together as process step, I don't know, I think it was number 5. So it was sort of like, we come to the table with the work in progress, the stuff that we've committed to, or the things that are on rails or so on and so forth. And we prioritize those, we sequence those based on dependencies and so on. And then there's maybe some capacity left. And whether that capacity is 5%, 25%, or 30%, I don't have a good sense of that now. So I sit in this chair and I'm reluctant to suggest new initiatives or directions for the town to go, or things that I might have on my sort of punch list, because I don't know how full we are.
Right.
As a board or as staff, and staff constraints have to be considered here as well. And so really it's about, for me, it's about coming out of the room with some insight into the next 9 months. Where are we going? What are the highlights? The sort of the big stuff, not the minutia, but the big things that are going to chew up board time and broader resources. And then in the process steps I kind of laid out, I think the artifact that comes out of the workshop needs to be sort of scrutinized by staff and so on, to make sure that, hey, this is doable, right, from the staff's perspective. And then ultimately it's a plan that we publish, and people can see, our constituents can understand where we're going, what are we doing, and what we're proposing, that extra, if our plate is 75% full and we've got 25% capacity, how did we decide to fill that? And I laid out some steps where I said we would brainstorm, prioritize, call the list, and then document and justify how we came up with these additional steps, and those or not steps, additional initiatives or projects, which may be the source from prior listening sessions, for example. So our constituents kind of know like where we got that stuff from. We just didn't come up with it. It came from a strategic plan, or maybe it came from a listening session. So they can see the full picture, and we can see the full picture, and then we can start to ask longer term questions. For example, I was asking earlier about the public-private partnership, because I know that part of that discussion is going to be about parking. And I don't want us to go down into the neck of the funnel and just be talking about parking. I want to have a discussion before that about access to downtown, which is broader than parking. Parking is one component to that, but I think if we're going to transition away from our current car culture or whatever, we've got to, we don't want to make it easy for people to just continue to do the things they do currently. So part of that discussion is at the wide end of the funnel is let's just talk about it in a broad functional sense. So that's an example of like, I kind of want to know when we're going to, I'd like to be able to plan for the wide part of the funnel before we get to the narrow part where we're just like, hey, we don't talk about parking now, don't talk about anything else. So that's my pitch, and I went on much longer than I intended. Thank you.
And happy to, as I say, hand off that discussion between you and the facilitator, because I think you'll speak each other's language maybe better than I've been able to. And that's perfectly fine. Again, my only request would be that there's buy-in from the remainder of the board.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. I think it's important. And I don't know if, again, we're at the end of a 3 hours almost being here, if it would be better for people individually to email John and say, this is what I'd like, and maybe whoever's gonna do it, if it's Alex or someone else, can we fit in some of these ideas? I don't know, because I listened to what Eric said, and I think it's appropriate, but then I'm going, I may get home and say, yeah, but I think this is important for us to work on too.
I don't want this to be a Haverstock project product.
Right.
It should be the select board's wishes.
Yeah.
I've been trying to simply help it get there where we have a space, facilitators, food, a date.
Yeah.
And I don't care that much about what's on the agenda.
Right.
For me, the real goal is to have you folks working together.
And I keep thinking, I keep coming back, and maybe I'm totally off base on this. I keep coming back to, we have 3 new people. There must be questions that they come to and they go, because I was in their place 4 years ago, and that I wanted to know more information because I felt like I was just kind of sitting and getting the information bit by bit, but I wanted to be more prepared. And so that's why I'm not trying to vacillate, but I do think there needs to be more input. Brandon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 9 months left in this current board. And I see exactly where you're coming from, Eric, because when you talk about just the regular meetings every 2 weeks, setting aside the special 1 week budget meetings, that 9 months factors down only into about 19 regular meetings that this board has left. And so, gosh, that's not a lot of time for us to do something, let alone do long-term thinking projects. And we're always going to have the stuff that has to come up.
The conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And maybe that is 75% of what you do.
Right. So in other words, like, it would be great to leave this meeting with, let's say 2 or 1, if it's big enough, long-term project on each of these 19 meetings, but they each have to have a meeting slot, and then if for the proper long-term project, for each of those things, we need to start thinking about back-out schedules, because sometimes it's a 4-month process leading into the decision meeting. So I think that's kind of what I'm hearing, and I am 1,000% behind that.
I think, John, first of all, you do excellent work. We all really appreciate
No,
it.
I just don't want to get in your way. That's all.
I understand. I think that I think there's just sort of a communication element that I think you heard what we were discussing last time, what Eric was talking about, and we were sort of, there's a consensus around it. You translated it into strategic planning, which is understandable, but I think there's actually a distinction that Eric was really trying to make. And the way I understand it is, you know, we have a strategic plan. Ideally, we'll get to reviewing and updating that at some point. But I think we sort of felt as a board that a more urgent priority is to produce something that's a little bit more like operationally specific than a vision.
A work plan.
Strategic vision, a work plan,
Yep.
exactly. So, so I think, yeah, you know, and I think it also took me a little while to wrap my head around it as well. So I had a separate conversation with Eric, and that kind of helped me get there a little further. And then I suggested, like, well, why don't I give a stab at sort of like trying to imagine what this might actually look like in the format of a workshop. And so I had circulated that earlier today. And I think that sort of captures a potential process. Obviously, it'd be wonderful to have a professional facilitator weigh in on that process. But something that sort of winds up with, yeah, this is like, we have our priorities, we know what's on the plate, as Eric has been saying, and then we have like a timeline of what needs to happen in order to make progress on those key critical topics. And as I mapped it out, I added time estimates, which sort of led me to be like, this is, you know, it's gonna take a while. But I think what Eric first suggested, I think around 4 hours was sort of part of the idea of how long that might take. So if we're trying to stay within a 6 hour, I mean, I say that because if people are on board with sort of that general idea, that can be developed further, perhaps in collaboration with the facilitator that you've been talking to, or someone.
It's certainly permissible for me to just call the LCT and say, thanks, but no thanks for their morning event. And we can simply do work planning for 6 hours.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think, if we're down to commit to the 6 hour day, that leaves a couple hours, you know, like when we want breaks, obviously, but if VLCT can do like a 1 hour or 1.5 hour, I don't know if we want to go beyond our 6 hour commitment, but I'm not opposed. And I sort of got the sense that other people were open to like an earlier session that's more in like the 1 to 1.5 hour range, and then a longer chunk of the day that is focused on this like gritty work of like the operationally, developing a plan for the year.
Are you still interested in a facilitator? Because I think without a facilitator, I think we waste a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be Alex Torpy, who I met when he was town manager in Hanover, and who is now working with VLCT to do some of these, I won't call them trainings, but select board gatherings, and seems pretty flexible about what agendas he works with. And that's why I had suggested maybe putting Eric directly in touch with him to make sure that you're getting what you want as a board from the bulk of the workshop, the bulk of the gathering.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least providing, if Eric's willing to do that, or at least then that.
He had offered to, but I appreciated the offer.
It's not my expertise in terms of choosing a facilitator. I don't really have thoughts on that, but yeah. Ashley, yeah.
Miranda, do you have any thoughts? And then
no, I agree. I think if Eric is willing and able to communicate with Alex, I think the plan that both you and I have put together looks great. So I yield to you to cultivate the session.
Let me check in with Mike. Mike, you got
yeah. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on it. I think the idea that Eric and Ida presented is a good one. Sort of, let's try and figure out what our priorities are for our remaining time.
Thank you. Okay, Ashley, and then
Awesome.
I guess that will give John enough information and Eric enough information that they can go from there.
Yeah. I agree. I loved the draft agenda that Ida came up with. And I also agree, you know, we want to have a facilitator. I think that I would like to spend more time on the annual work planning than like half the day. Yeah, I do think it, you know, maybe like an hour or so in the morning that is a little more generalized. But I do have to say, like, this looks great, what VLCT has put together. But it feels very generalized and it feels very kind of like entry level. And I know like I'm a new board member, but I have taken advantage of other VLCT trainings in various areas. And I think many of us that may be new board members are like maybe like veteran engaged community members. So I think that we may have some of those like concepts of like cultivating volunteerism and leadership, like maybe something that skills we've already developed to get to this point. So what I'm really interested in addition to the annual work planning as outlined in that draft agenda sent by Ida, is maybe back to the efficiency topic that we kind of broached last time. And Ida, I know you had some really great ideas. We chatted once about meeting efficiency and you got to be part of that session with Dominic Cloud. And I think there's some more we can do there. And also like I had seen some ideas of what other towns were doing and how they communicated information to the public in ways that didn't necessarily eat up as much meeting time, but were also like better ways of communicating. And so I think there's some work to be done there. And I'd love to see that maybe be the hour to hour and a half before an annual work plan. It's my 2 cents.
It works. Okay. Does that give you guys enough?
And sorry, John.
It's hard for me to suss out the common areas there. I'll have a talk with Alex and introduce him to Eric for the bulk of the meeting discussion and find out if VLCT wants to, I won't use the word bother, but wants to bother with a 1 hour presentation. They might say 1 hour on a Sunday, no thanks.
Yeah.
It could happen.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Mary?
Sure.
So if VLCT isn't interested, which again, I would totally understand, and I feel bad that
No.
we've
Let's be honest with everybody.
Yeah. So then what would our options be in looking for a facilitator? Like what would your next go-to?
No, I think
be?
Alex, again, works with VLCT and he works without VLCT.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So he could be an option.
And he certainly would be someone who knows what efficiency work looks like and what it doesn't look like. If that's where we ended up doing something for that amount of time.
That's awesome. That's good to know. And yeah, I also support Eric speaking with him directly. Just we're looking for that
cut right to the chase.
consensus. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
Yes.
We're not putting more obstacles in your way.
No.
And thank you so much, John.
Listen, everybody, I appreciate that everybody's got views and God bless you for having them. It makes life interesting for the rest of us to make it all work.
Okay.
Or try.
Great. Okay, so we are on to commission reports. Mike, you want to start if you have any?
Sure, I have no commission reports.
All right, thank you, Mike. Ashley.
I did attend the Resilient Hartford meeting today, but I haven't reviewed the minutes and digested enough, so I don't really have much to report.
That's okay. Brandon?
Attended no commissions.
All right. Ida?
I know that the Hartford Community Coalition did have their quarterly board meeting. I was hoping to attend. Unfortunately, I was not able to, and I haven't followed up to learn about anything, but you know, their next big main event is the block party, HCC block party, which will be June 25th. Yes, thank you. At 5 p.m. I believe, right here outside Town Hall. So that is a big annual event that Hartford Community Coalition throws that has a lot of involvement from a lot of different organizations in the community, a lot of great resources and information and fun things available in the movie screening outdoors as well if weather permits. So keep that in mind, and I will hopefully have more to report once I learn about anything else that happened in their board meeting.
Thank you, Ida. Miranda? All right, Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just that the Historic Preservation Commission is still looking for members, and I think I'll just extend the offer for people to come to meetings and learn more about the commission. They do some interesting work, and hopefully it stays afloat and alive and vibrant. That's all.
All right, thank you, and I have none. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ashley.
I move that we approve payroll ending 5/24/2005.
2025.
Oh my gosh. Yes, 2025. Approve the AP manifest dated 5/23 and 5/29 of 2025. Approve the meeting minutes of the 5/13/2025 meeting, and approve the future meeting of 6/10/2025 and 6/24/2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Ida, thank you. And I will say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye, so that passes 7-0. And there is no executive session. Anyone want to make a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Eric seconds it. Brandon made the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we leave at 9:08. Don't forget to sign the paperwork.
Good night, everybody.
And thank you, Nick. Thank you all.
Early